This mini lecture will be about the light reactions, and they take place in the thylakoid membrane. And we're going to start with the light, and the light is absorbed, and sometimes it's absorbed directly by chlorophyll, and the chlorophyll is located in two photosystems. And the two photosystems are called photosystem 1 and 2, and they're named that just by the order of their discovery. And the photosystem is this purple blob with the green chloroplast in it. And the photosystem includes chlorophyll at its center, and the light could be absorbed directly by the chlorophyll. Often the light is absorbed by nearby pigments of other energy levels, and then the energy is transferred to the chlorophyll. Plants in their thylakoid membrane include a variety of pigments. That's where we see the different colors of leaves in the fall, is that those pigments are there all the time, and their different natures are revealed as the pigments break down in the fall. Some of the pigments are involved in sort of spreading out the energy that the photosystems can capture. Other pigments are screening pigments in the same way that our pigments in our human skin protect us from some of the damaging sunlight. The plant leaves also can get exposed to too much sun and get damaged. And so there are a variety of different pigments, and but for photosynthesis, we quickly zoom in on chlorophyll that's at the center of these photosystems. And so we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about what happens. And what happens when chlorophyll absorbs a photon of light energy is that the chlorophyll electron is an electron in orbiting chlorophyll is excited, and it's a valence electron in the outer shell, and it's excited to a higher energy state, or a higher energy orbital. And if the chlorophyll would just be by itself, that higher energy state is unstable, and so we can draw it like this, where the chlorophyll gets excited by the light and is holding that energy, but is not going to hang on to it. It's not stable, so the chlorophyll will lose that energy, and the energy would be lost as light. So molecules can do that, and there are a variety of molecules that can do that. They can absorb light energy, and then they release it. And the release of light is called fluorescence. And chlorophyll by itself would fluoresce in the presence of light. In the photosystems physically next to the chlorophyll, there is another molecule, and it's called the primary electron acceptor. And the magic of photosynthesis occurs right here. The physical proximity of chlorophyll with the primary electron acceptor allows this excited electron to be physically handed off to the primary electron acceptor. Nice name, primary electron acceptor. And so chlorophyll loses an electron. It gets excited, and then the electron is handed off to the primary electron acceptor. In doing so, the chlorophyll loses an electron, the chlorophyll gets oxidized, and the primary electron acceptor in turn will get reduced. And in general, oxidized molecules are at a lower energy state than reduced molecules, and so chlorophyll is going to drop back down to a lower energy state because it's going to lose its electron, like that. In losing its electron, it's going to knock the primary electron acceptor up to a reduced higher energy state. The fate of that electron is that it's going to be passed in this way, down, 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 down an electron transport chain of several molecules held in the thylakoid membrane. The thylakoid membrane holds these in close proximity to each other. We learned that these phospholipids are loosely connected and that molecules can float around, bob around in the membrane. And so this is a fluid membrane, and these the primary electron acceptors and these electron transport chain molecules are floating around and bumping into each other. And this is nice, showing where the electron goes. It goes down, tumbles down a pathway. And you'll see our first sort of comparison of photosystem 2 and photosystem 1 is the fate of the electron that is lost by chlorophyll. And we just need to learn this because in a multiple choice test there can be lots of comparisons or several comparisons between photosystem 2 and photosystem 1, and let's just knock them out right now. So photosystem 2, the fate of the electron is that it gets handed off to photosystem 1. See it? There it goes. It gets handed off to photosystem 1. And we'll talk about why it's heading there. In the process, it is used to pump protons. So the energy captured from photosystem 2 is the energy used to make this space acidic. So it's the energy of photosystem 2 that is used to make ATP. See that? So photosystem 1 is not used to make ATP. It's not used to make this acidic compartment. Instead, photosystem 1 electron is handed off through a short electron transport chain and used to make NADPH. And those are the two energy intermediates that come out of the light reactions. ATP here in the stroma, right? See that? That's where the Calvin cycle enzymes are. They're just hanging out here, and some of them need ATP to stimulate their endergonic reaction. Others need NADPH, and here it is. And NADPH is a reduced form of NAD+. So here you see the two main energetic products of the light reactions, produced right there where you need them. Okay, so the fate of the electrons are different. The one electron from photosystem 2 heads to photosystem 1. The electron from photosystem 1 actually heads to NADP+. NADP+ gets reduced to NADPH. So a different fate of the electron. Then the next thing is that after chlorophyll has lost its electron, where does chlorophyll get a new electron? And the answer is different. So we already learned that in photosystem 1, chlorophyll gets a new electron. This chlorophyll is going to lose its electron ultimately to NAD+. Where does this chlorophyll get a new electron? To be recharged and ready to absorb more light. And the answer is photosystem 1 gets its electron from photosystem 2. Okay? That's where it's getting electrons when needed. And then here's the deal. Where does photosystem 2 get its electron? And the answer is it gets its electron to recharge chlorophyll. It gets it from water. And the water, this is just a water environment. There's plenty of water around all the time. Whether you water your plants or not, they can still do photosynthesis because they're living in a water environment inside the cell. And what happens is the water is cleaved to produce some hydrogen protons, again helping to make this acidic, and also oxygen is released. And so the oxygen that plants famously produce is produced as a sort of byproduct or a recharging reaction in the light reactions. And then the next thing to say is that why are there two photosystems like this? It seems a little bit odd. Why are there two? And the answer is we're going to take an electron from here and we are going to, through a series of steps, we're going to push it up a pretty tall hill of energy. NADPH is like NADH. It is equivalent to 3 ATP. So we learned about that in the mitochondria, that this is a very high energy molecule, and we're going to push that electron all the way up, right? Because why do we push it up? Remember, O2 holds on to electrons really well. It doesn't want to let go of electrons. Oxygen is very electronegative, and we're going to take it away, and we're going to push it up a pretty big hill. And so it's, you see, the fate of the electron kind of is, you can kind of follow it. See, there's an electron that starts here. It chunks its way through photosystem 2, absorbing energy on the way, and then using that energy to help make ATP. And then eventually the electron gets bumped up again and is up now at a high enough level that it can be used to reduce NAD plus to NADPH. Okay, and that's the story of the light reactions. Here's another summary figure that's nice. It's showing the same thing we just talked about, but what's nice about it is, see, it's sort of putting it in a little bit of this energy graph, where this would be delta G and this would be the progress of the reaction. It doesn't have the energy levels perfect, like we just talked about, but it does have this basic flow, and this is often called the Z scheme because of the focus on that electron as it heads through these energy pathways. And all happening in the thylakoid membrane. This is exactly the same as the previous figure, just displayed in a different way. We're going to produce ATP, we're going to produce NADPH, those are the energy intermediates that are going to be used to synthesize sugar, and we're going to produce oxygen. Boom, like that. And the input is going to be light energy coming in here, I guess, like that. And that's the bottom line coming out of here. The next thing to mention is this idea that we already talked about a little bit about sort of some of the parallels in the story of the light reactions and the story of cellular respiration in the mitochondria. And what's shown in dark here is these spaces that become very acidic as the result of electron transport. So there's an electron transport chain in both cases that's being used to pump protons into a space. And in this case, the space is small, and really nothing else is happening in those spaces because they're really low pH and acidic, sort of toxic, troubling, chemically difficult places. And so there are small compartments that are used to store that energy, and then in both cases, ATP synthase is used to synthesize ATP. So there's a nice parallel with that. And the next thing that we'll talk about is we'll talk about one more thing, and that is that the chapter 10 will describe the basic story. So here's the basic story of the light reactions, and then it will describe one switch, just to show you that metabolic pathways are often regulated and the cell is making a choice of what to do. And here's a choice that some plants make. Sometimes plants want to produce ATP, and they just don't want to produce NADPH. And an example of that would be a new plant, a seedling that's just coming up, and it's growing, and it wants just a lot of ATP energy, not to make sugars. NADPH and ATPH are going to be used in the Kelvin cycle. So it doesn't want to make as much sugar, but it just wants to make a lot of energy and make the leaf grow. How's it going to do that? It's going to take that ATP often and use it in direct synthesis, to make proteins like that, or DNA. So sometimes plants want this. So during leaf growth, early leaf growth, they might want to switch and not produce sugars, but just produce lots of ATP, and they can do that. So here the pathways switch, and in this case, only photosystem 1 is being used, and what happens is that instead of handing the electron off to synthesize NADPH, this is where the switch occurs, and the switch is that the primary electron acceptor dumps the electron into the ATP synthesizing electron transport chain. So that's it. We just say there's a variation here, and the variation has a name. It's called it's kind of a nice name, photophosphorylation. And the book does that. It's just to show an example of a switch. And there would be other switches, you know, but this is a nice introduction to a switch when the plant wants to do something different. Okay, so we'll stop there.